The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be? With me, you're me, Louie T. Welcome to the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your Commander-in-Chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me on this Memorial Day Monday. Hopefully this was a day of remembrance for some. Hopefully it was a day of relaxation for the rest, right? Hopefully this day treated you well in whatever facet it came to you, and whatever you chose to do with it. But I'm gonna take blame for this one. I mean, this one's on me, guys. This one's on me. This one's on me. And when it's on me, I'm gonna tell y'all it's on me. So you can put this one on my plate. You can charge this one to my card, okay? Because I very vividly and descriptively remember me saying just about a week ago, man, does it feel good to not have to worry about waking up to allegations of sexual assault or any kind of negativity. I very vividly remember saying that just about a week ago. Everything was all good just a week ago. And I was adamant about it. Like, oh man, this is so refreshing. What a breath of fresh air. That instead of waking up into sexual assault allegations, I'm waking up to us signing another high-level scout or acquiring another big-time name in the front office to bolster what is already a very strong front office group. Well, I did it again. I did it again. I'm guilty as charged. I took a nap today. Had an opportunity to shut my eyes. Kids were taking a nap. So why not? Why not take a nap? Wake up. And of course, there it is. Brandon McManus accused, now again, this is all alleged, accused of sexual assault by a couple of flight attendants on their charter flight to London when he was a member of the Jacksonville Jaguars this past season. Okay. So as the story goes, this is from a report by ESPN filed by the two plaintiffs in question, right? The complainants, if you will. They allege that Brandon McManus was getting rowdy on that said flight to London. Now, the two plaintiffs are suing McManus and the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're suing the Jaguars, I think, for $1 million, something over $1 million, something like that. And they would like to press charges against McManus. They're holding the Jaguars accountable for not stepping in and having McManus act in accordance to whatever NFL statutes should be in place. They did not hold him to a standard high enough. They made him feel like it was okay for him to sexually harass and make physically uncomfortable these two women. Now, apparently, there were drinks on this flight, which you would expect. It's a long flight from Jacksonville to London, assuming that there are no stops. Why would there be? There was money, alcohol involved. McManus reportedly was kind of treating them like strippers, pulling out money, tossing up $100 bills, reportedly rubbed himself up against these two women in different situations and scenarios as they were serving food and beverages, just really making them feel very, very uncomfortable on this flight. This was something that this was reportedly done repeatedly, and when he was called up about it, he smirked and walked away. So those are the charges right now, alleged charges being filed against McManus Don't know what to make of this. I always like to err on the side of caution anytime someone's being accused of anything of this nature. I like to let the process play itself out, but we know how these things work. You're guilty until proven innocent, which is unfortunate because it's supposed to be the other way around. You know, most Commanders fans are probably like, yo, he's a kicker. Just get rid of his ass. We don't need this shit. And I get that too. But I think we can all agree on this. I can't confirm nor deny this, by the way. But I think we can agree on this. The organization had no idea that this was coming. They were blindsided by this. Had they known that something like this could potentially rear its ugly head, they would not have signed him. This guy signed to they didn't sign him to a 3-year deal. This wasn't a massive signing. This is a 1-year, $3.75 million deal for a kicker. Okay? Kickers come a dime a dozen now. That doesn't mean you're getting a good kicker. It just means kickers come a dime a dozen. And so they didn't know that this was coming. If they would have known that this was coming, they would not have signed him. Okay? So I guess he was trying to make these two women part of the Mile High Club. Pun intended, because Brandon McManus used to play for the Denver Broncos for many, many years and played at Mile High. So I'll be here all week. But seriously, it's not a laughing matter, especially those who have experienced something like this before. It is definitely not a joke. But I don't know what the team is going to do. I assume that they're going to try to let the process play itself out. Obviously, this feels like a he said, she said type of scenario. So it's going to be hard for there to be like substantial evidence pointing to him doing this because it's their word against his. So I don't know if the team feels strongly enough to move on from him. And had this happened a lot sooner in the offseason, they probably would have. But you're now at the point where you probably have to wait to see if other kickers shake free, which they will. There are a lot of teams right now with 2 place kickers on their roster. They're going to have a kickoff this offseason, this camp, and then the loser of that is going to be released, and then you can start to pick from that pool. A lot of people are like, hey, let's get a reunion with our guy Joey, right? The Sly guy. He's already on the team. You know, these kickers don't just sit around, especially ones that are of any quality. You may not love Joey Sly, but he's got a big leg, and he can make kicks. And if you have those 2 things, you're going to have an opportunity to have a job in the NFL. So Sly is part of the New England Patriots right now. So for those of you advocating for Joey Sly to come back, he's not available right now. Now, I will say there is that UFL kicker for, I think, what's the name of the Philadelphia team? Whatever that name of that team is, this guy seems to be kicking, especially early in that season. I don't watch any of those games, but social media was all a buzz with this guy making these ridiculously long kicks. I think he made like a 61-yarder for a game winner, and then he turned around and made like a 59 or 58-yarder for a game winner or something like that. So there are options out there. If Washington should choose to go in a different direction, there are options available, and they can bring in other kickers to put themselves in a position to see if they need to move on from McManus. We'll see what happens, but this is exactly what you don't want if you're the Washington Commanders. Everything has been good this offseason. All the vibes have been positive. All of the news coming out of Washington has been that of the uplifting variety. Again, signing guys and changing the culture, changing the type of people that are in the organization and in the building, and then this happens. It's something that you don't want to have to deal with. Obviously, we've talked about this. I was so excited about not having to deal with this anymore. And then look, again, put this one on my account. Charge this one to my account. Okay, I'm guilty as charged. I'm not running away from this. You can charge this one to my account. I'm going to take the blame for this one. We'll see what they decide to do. he's a kicker. It's going to be the first thing that people say, which is, hey, that's translation. Hey, just go get another kicker, man. It's not that simple, guys. It's not like, understand, we've gone through this. It's not like we as a fan base don't know what it's like to have kicking issues. Just 2 seasons ago, in 2021, we had kicking issues. All right? We had Chris Blewett as a kicker, among other guys. We had like 4 different kickers that season, right? 4 or 5 different kickers. We started out with D-Hop. He missed the kick against Kansas City, and that was it. They cut him, and then we went through a slew of kickers that year, Johnson and Blewett, and none of them were any good, and we finally found Joey Sly at the end of that season. So understand that it could get really, really ugly fast. But trust and believe, if they can find a replacement, if this thing gets just the slightest bit murky, like it gets nasty and they don't want any parts of this and they want to separate themselves from, what this could do to them with Brandon McManus, I could see them quickly finding an exit and going and getting another kicker. It's not going to be very hard for them to do that. But my guess is they're going to allow this thing to play itself out, kind of see where it goes. They're going to monitor this very closely. They're now aware, obviously, of this happening. So now they have a decision to make. I would not be shocked if we hear that Washington is working out kickers tomorrow. Wouldn't shock me in the least. They fired up the phone today. They set up a couple of got on the phone with a couple of agents, said, hey, is your guy available for a workout tomorrow? And I would not be shocked in the least if we got 2 kickers in here tomorrow working out and they sign one of them, which means they'd have to cut somebody else to make way for that kicker. They could cut McManus himself. I don't think they're going to go that route yet, right? Because keep in mind, and we've talked about this, for where we are as a team, the place kicking position is paramount, okay? We're not going to be blowing teams out, scoring 30-plus points every single week and averaging 28.9 points a game, okay? We're going to have to score field goals, and we're going to have to outkick teams, and we're going to have to win special teams. We talked about that. If that number that some of you have, set as a high bar for this team to strive to attain to this year, 10 wins, 9 wins. If you're looking for the team to hit that number, you're going to need your field goal kicker to be pretty consistent this year. On the positive side, okay? Because you can be consistently bad too. We need our kicker to make kicks. And McManus was supposed to come in and, if nothing else, stabilize from 0 to 49. He was supposed to stabilize from 0 to 49. He's talked about being one of the most accurate kickers in NFL history inside of 40. Sly, you could argue that was the weakness of his. He'd miss kicks from 37 yards out and then give us he just couldn't believe he just missed. Like last year, for instance, against Chicago, we were trying to battle our way back into that game. He makes that kick. I was very adamant. If he would have made the kick, we would have come back and won that game. We probably would not have. We probably did exactly what we did, which was give up a touchdown on the next possession to put the game out of reach. But you can't tell me that. In my mind, he makes that kick because the momentum had already shifted to us. The Bears were reeling. And when you're a bad team and you haven't won a game in like 18 games straight, you start to think, oh, my God, we're going to lose again. If he'd have made that kick, cut it to a 1-score game, I think we could have come back and beat him. But he didn't give us the chance. He didn't give us an opportunity. He did the same thing, if I'm not mistaken, against Detroit in week 2 of 2020, where we scored a touchdown late. You need the extra point to cut it to 8 to give you a chance at a 8-point game where a 2-point conversion, you got to keep the onside kick, do all of that stuff. But I think we even could have called I think we still had our timeouts. So we could have kicked it deep. And he missed the extra point. And we were down 9. And so the game was essentially over at that point. Right? He killed us like that a lot, where he would miss a kick that he had no business missing. And it would put us, and he was notorious for missing extra points too. He struggled from shorter distances. His calling card was he would knock the bombs down, right? 54, 58. We weren't accustomed to that. You know, Dustin Hopkins couldn't hit anything above 50 to save his life, it felt like. And Sly was the opposite. But McManus was supposed to be a sure thing from inside of 50 yards. That's a really comforting feeling because most of your kicks are going to come from inside of 50 yards. So I think they're going to be hesitant to just move on from him. But if they find a viable option that they feel comfortable bringing to camp, and this guy shows throughout camp that he's capable, they may move on from Brandon McManus. So he's put himself in a tough spot here, did McManus. We'll see. I wouldn't be shocked if we hear that Washington worked out a couple of kickers tomorrow or Wednesday. We'll see. So that sucked. All right. I'm not going to even front for how this offseason has gone and how everything has been positive vibes, good juju, kind of feeling like we're moving in a different direction. And this doesn't change any of that, by the way. Let's just be abundantly clear here. Nothing has changed. We're still doing everything the right way. We're still building this thing toward. This feels like just a slight misstep that was very unnecessary. And what makes it 10 times worse is it's a kicker, right? It's one of those positions where you go, bro, you don't have the leeway to do anything that draws negative attention to the team. You're not in a position to do that. You're a kicker, bro. You're the first to go. Whether right or wrong, that's how kickers are viewed, right? You're a kicker, bro. But we'll see. I hope Brandon McManus isn't a creep. All right. As I was setting up for the video, I was like, please tell me Brandon McManus belongs here, because it's starting to feel like he's not like us. Did you see what I just did there? Huh? He's starting to feel like he's not like us. But we'll see, right? We'll see if just say it ain't so, Brandon. Say it ain't so. All right. Want to continue with the theme of the Big Mac show because I want to talk about another Mac, if you will. This one is Christian McCaffrey. From one Mac to the next. Christian McCaffrey's brother, Luke, and I told you I'm going to make sure that I go out of my way to not call him that. So I just literally was going to say Christian McCaffrey, and I tried to clean it up, but I said I wasn't going to do that. So I'm going to tell you why I just did that, because he's Luke McCaffrey, and he's here on his own merit. And I've been very clear about his skill set and his talents. And, you know, the reason why this is important to me is a lot of people are starting to get cold feet about this receiving group that we have in Washington. And I'm like, could we have done more at receiver this offseason? Yeah, I think we could have. I'd agree. Anybody that says, hey, Louie T, I feel like we left some meat on the bone at receiver this year, I'd go, sure, I could definitely see that. Absolutely. You know, I don't love the trio of Crowder, Damiere Byrd, and what's my man's name from that played with the Eagles last year that we signed? I can't think of the other receiver's name. I don't love that group, right? That trio that they signed. It kind of feels like meh, right? They could have thrown a different guy in that mix, or they could have, drafted. Like, there were other guys that were available this offseason as receivers that I think could have been more impactful towards the bottom of the roster, if you will. So from that standpoint, yeah, they could have done a little bit more. And I told you that there was one receiver in particular that where we took Luke McCaffrey, I would have been more excited had we taken that receiver. But I'm not tripping about that, because I like Luke McCaffrey, and having watched him, I think this guy's going to come in here fit like hand in glove. And one thing that I continue to tell myself about Luke is he's only been playing the receiver position for 2 years, really. This guy came into college football as a quarterback. So there's still a lot of room for growth. But if you want to argue they could have done more, Zacchaeus is his name. Olamide Zacchaeus, Jamison Crowder, and Damiere Byrd. That trio that they signed, and I'm in my mind, you sign those three dudes, and probably one of them is going to make this football team. Maybe two. I think one of them is going to make this team more likely than not. And then I was very disrespectful to Rosemy Jack Saint, right? Very, very disrespectful. I mean, just in every sense of the word. And he's probably going to have a shot to make this roster too, right? Which speaks to the lack of back end of the receiver room depth, if you will. The fact that we're even having a conversation about a Rosemy Jack Saint. That said, I think the whole I'm worried about the receiver position is again, the reason I am not as concerned is because I don't have a De'Ami Brown problem. So many people have a De'Ami Brown problem. I don't, especially going into the last year of his deal. I don't have a De'Ami Brown problem. So if you ask me, you got 4 receivers. And, forget about what they ultimately end up doing with those final 2 roster spots. If the assumption is they're going to keep 6 receivers, you got 4 guys. You should be fine in the NFL with 4 receivers that you feel comfortable with. I feel comfortable with. You may not feel comfortable with De'Ami Brown. I do. I don't have a De'Ami. As long as De'Ami Brown isn't called upon to be our number 1 or number 2 option, I'm totally fine with De'Ami Brown as a, third option. If he's pressed into action, it has to be number 3 at receiver. That's fine. I mean, again, it's a little bit different than it was last year from this standpoint. I think we have more playmakers this year than we did last year. We were thin at tight end last year. We had the running backs, but outside of that, it was what it was, right? This year, I think you've got some more depth, some more, I think, playmaking ability at the tight end position, right? We'll see what Ben Sinnott is, but even I think, and I get it, they were similar in age, but I think Zach Ertz is an upgrade over Logan Thomas. That's just me personally. I think he's an upgrade over him. And Ben Sinnott is better than anything we had on the roster behind Logan Thomas. And it's not even remotely close. He's way better than anything we had behind Logan Thomas last year. So you're at least at a bare minimum 2 deep at tight end. Austin Eckler is an upgrade over Antonio Gibson. So I think you're better at running back. And then, to me, the receiver position is roughly the same. And I think the wild card is Jahan Dotson, because we know what we're getting out of Terry. I think Luke McCaffrey is going to step in, and he's going to give us what Curtis Samuel gave us last year at a bare minimum. And even if he falls short of that, right, let's just say he's a rookie. He shouldn't be called upon to be essentially your number 2, because that's what Curtis was last year, and that's not what Curtis was supposed to be. Curtis was supposed to be our number 3, but he actually put up number 2 numbers because of how the offense went a season ago. But I think he can put up Curtis type numbers, and even if he doesn't, I expect Jahan to offset the difference by him taking a step forward by him not only getting the numbers that he put up last year, which were, mid numbers, middle of the pack, basic numbers, I expect him to take a step forward towards 1,000 yards. He may not get there, right? I'm not going to put that on the plate of my rookie quarterback that 2 receivers need to have 1,000 yards, but I could see Jahan, besting, I think he had 7 something in his rookie season, Jahan did, or it might have been 5 something. I think he had 5 something and he had 7 touchdowns. That's what I might be thinking about. Whatever the case may be, I could see Jahan in that 770 to 810 range, right? Which if he does that, coupled with Luke McCaffrey with 400 and something, well, that's what you need right there. That offsets Curtis's numbers and exceeds it from a season ago, right? Which is what I anticipate happening. Terry over 1,000, Jahan somewhere in that 770 to 810 range, and then Luke no worse than 450, right? And then whatever you get out of the rest of the receivers is cool. Like, that's what I anticipate. So I'm not in the slightest worried. If we're healthy, which I'm assuming health, I'm not worried about the receiver group. Some of you are. I'm not, because I expect Jahan to take that leap this season. The leap that I thought he was going to take last year, I expect him to take this year. I expect Luke to come in and play really well. And I think Diami is still, and again, he might not make this team. I'm still adamant. I'm still sticking to my guns. If he doesn't make this team, if they trade him, if they release him, then I got a double O that I got to offer up. Until then, I'm sticking to my story. Diami will be on this team. There's, to me, no reason for him not to be. There's not enough talent at receiver for us to cut Diami Brown in my mind's eye. There's just not enough talent here. If there were, then I would be all for it. There's just not enough talent. To me, you keep Diami Brown in the last year of his rookie contract. It's not hurting you. You don't have a ton of talent anyway. That gives you 4 receivers who have played in this league, or 3 at least, that have played in this league, and a third-round rookie that you feel good about. And that gives you 4 quality receivers, to me, going into the season. And then Jamison Crowder makes this team. That's 5 because he's a veteran that can get it done in this league as well. So we'll see what they ultimately decide to do, right, at receiver. But I said all of that to say I'm confident in Luke McCaffrey. I told you that when we drafted him. I told you that the tape suggests that this guy is really good already, and there's so much room for his growth to take place. And it's always good to hear confirmation from a guy who I always like to hear his opinion. I don't always agree with it. And Christopher Cooley, who, at one point said that Terry McLaurin wasn't a number 1 wide receiver. I disagreed with that. I understood the points that he was trying to make, and I get what he was saying, but I disagreed, and I still do. And I think Terry's a number 1 receiver, right? Now, where on that totem pole of number 1s, that's up for debate. But I tend to agree with Christopher Cooley and his assessment of players, and we're in lockstep here. I think he was a little over the top, with some of the things that he said. And I think in part because Luke McCaffrey's white, Chris Cooley is white. And, there's always this sort of this undertone, this racial undertone that, white dudes are slow, or you got to be like, you got to show us you blazing fast for us to acknowledge that you're fast. Like, normally, if you're white and you're a slot receiver, oh, you Julian Edelman, right? Oh, you Danny Amendola. You ain't fast. You quick, but you ain't fast. Like, that's the stigma, right? Is rarely is a white dude that comes into the league at a skill position, rarely is he viewed as, oh, he fast. Unless you ran track, you clearly were a blazer in high school, in college, and we know you come in and you certified 4.3, certified low 4.4s. Like, if that ain't what you're doing, then we just gonna put you in the box. So I wanted to talk about what Chris Cooley had to say about Luke McCaffrey. So this was from what site was this? Let's see. This is from Commander's Wire. All right, I want to give credit where credit is due. This is from the Commander's Wire. And they kind of transcribed what Chris Cooley had to say about Luke McCaffrey. He was on the Kevin Sheehan Show podcast recently. And, I haven't listened to it in a long time, so I don't even know the format anymore, if Kevin's still having Cooley on a weekly basis or if he has him come on only during the season. I haven't listened in probably almost 2 years now. So I have no idea if he's still a recurring guest or if he just comes on every so often or what may have you. But, one of the things that Kevin used to always do was have Cooley come on, and especially during the draft or during the season, during the season, he's going to come and he's going to break down, certain aspects, whether it's the quarterback or the offense, kind of talk about what he saw. I don't think he as much grades players anymore. Maybe he does. But during this time of the year, he, takes a look at some of the prospects. And he was on Kevin's show this past week. And one of the guys that he, broke down was Luke McCaffrey. So I'll read you this excerpt from this Commander's Wire article that was based off about, was talking about Luke McCaffrey and what Chris Cooley had to say in regards to him and what he thinks he could be in this league. So he starts out by saying, quote, "He is super fast." Let's pump the brakes there. I disagree with that statement that Luke McCaffrey's super fast. Does he have some speed? Does he have some quickness? Sure. He's a guy that can get vertical if you fall asleep behind the wheel. Are DBs in this league going to have a tough time keeping up with him? No, not at all. Okay. But if you get caught flat-footed, he can and will run by you. Okay. That will happen. That's how former Washington Redskins tight end Chris Cooley began his film review of Commander's third-round selection, Luke McCaffrey. A guest on the Kevin Sheehan Show podcast this week, Cooley mocked those who have already stereotyped McCaffrey as a receiver who won't be able to work downfield. Cooley asks, why? Because he's a white receiver? So right there, let me stop. That's a real thing, by the way, okay? Like, I think Cooley's a little perturbed because he himself is white, and he's heard that, and being in a predominantly black sport, especially when you're talking about skill players, that is a stereotype that is often put on white receivers. You come into the league as a white receiver, oh, you're a possession guy, you're going to work in the slot, you're going to be quicker than fast. Like, that's why Adam Thielen had so much success, because, you as a corner, you step up and see a white dude across the line of scrimmage from him. He looks a little gangly, doesn't look like, okay, he's harmless. What is he going to do? And then that white boy puts 8 catches for 141 yards and 2 scores on you. You're like, shit. And he can run a little bit, right? But you're going to have to bless somebody to get them to respect you before they give you that respect. That's just how it goes. So, Cooley has a little bit of that, like, bro, because he's white, we just going to stereotype him, put him in a box. Cooley continues, he tracks the ball incredibly well, which is one of the things I talked about. I told you, he catches the ball outside of his frame. He's fearless. He'll go over the middle of the football. These are all things that if you go back and you watch my assessment of Luke McCaffrey, you'll find these things. So Cooley continued, he tracks the ball incredibly well, and he is able to go up and get it. He has great ball skills. He then alluded to McCaffrey's one-handed and all-hands catches. The former Washington tight end and broadcaster likes McCaffrey's measurables as well. 4.46 40 at 6'2", which is something that our general manager Adam Peters mentioned when he said, a lot of people don't think about that, but that's the tallest receiver. Like, if we go to camp, if we go to the regular season without us signing, one of these guys like the Bryson Tremaine, for instance, he's still actively on the roster, the 90-man roster from last year from Stanford. He's 6'4", right? If we don't sign Bryson Tremaine, it doesn't matter if you sign Demir Bird, Jamison Crowder, or Olamide Zaccheaus. It doesn't matter if you sign Rosamie Jack Saint. None of those guys are taller than Luke McCaffrey. Like, we know Terry's not taller than him. We know that Jahan Dotson is not taller than him. He's the tallest receiver on the team at 6'2". We don't have any size. So that's a big plus for us. Adding to the fact that he can go up and get the football, that he can stretch outside of his frame and go and get the ball, right? At 198 pounds, 36-inch vertical at the NFL Combine, McCaffrey's other measurables were broad jump, 121, short shuttle, 4.02, which is really good, and three cone, 6.70, which is also fantastic for a wide receiver. For quick descriptions, Cooley offered fearless, tough, great run after the catch ability, good at finding open spots, all around good player, close quote. Quote, he can play in the slot, he can play outside, he will go over the middle and make a catch anywhere, closed quote. Also, Cooley is quoted by saying, he is in and out of his breaks pretty well. He does need to do a better job of setting up those breaks, setting up those routes. But as of now, he is able to create separation, closed quote. He then also goes on to say, he attacks the ball at its highest point. He makes body adjustments. He is a fearless blocker. He will get after it when he is in the run game. He is a play every snap kind of guy. He is going to be a good NFL player, closed quote. That is from one Christopher Cooley. I think he's going to be a really good NFL player as well, which is why I'm not as worried about the wide receiver position as some of you are. I know what I'm getting out of Terry. I think Jahan Dotson is going to be a fantastic receiver in this league. He is yet to have the opportunity, I feel like. Last year, I don't think he got enough opportunities. In the year before that, he was well on his way to proving that he was worthy of that first-round pick before he got injured. So I think if he can jump back into where he was in his rookie season, he's now 3 years in. This will be his third season. He knows the in and outs of the NFL now, knows what to expect. I think he's going to be in a much better offensive system that fits his skill set, that's going to get him involved more often. And then you add in Luke McCaffrey to that mix, along with the tight end position, along with Austin Eckler, along with Brian Robinson Jr., and a quarterback that's a playmaker as well. I just think we've got plenty of talent on offense now, right? And there's still room for growth, and there's still room for additions to make this offense even better. But I'm not as concerned about the receiver position. And part of the reason why is because of guys like Luke McCaffrey. I think we got 3 reliable wide receivers on this team. Now, it's easy for me to say that. I am projecting that Luke McCaffrey is going to be reliable. And for some of you, I'm projecting with Jahan Dotson as well, which I don't really feel that to be the case, because this is a guy that when we've called his number and we've asked him to make big plays, what has Jahan Dotson done? You could argue that in some of the biggest games we've had over the last 2 seasons, Jahan Dotson has played some of his best football. The biggest game we've played over the last 2 years was the Giants Sunday night football game. You could argue that is the single biggest regular season game we've played since the, dare I say, Dallas game in 2012. From a regular season standpoint, you could say that the Eagles season finale in 2020, which was for the playoffs, was bigger because you won that game and you were in, you lose and you're out. But it was that, I mean, it was to go to 7-9. I mean, what are we talking about, right? The Eagles were awful that year, and they benched Jalen Hurts in favor of Nate Sudfeld. And it was just a lot of funky foolishness going on in that game. Hard to get super excited and charged up for that one, like I did for the Giants game, where you knew the winner of this game was probably going to make the postseason, and the loser could still make the playoffs, but it's going to be a lot tougher. We knew the percentages. All right, the team that won that game was going to have a 91% chance of making the playoffs, and the loser of that game dropped to like 66% or something like that, or it might have been in the 30s, as a matter of fact. So it was a huge game, and Jahan was massive. He had the only touchdown grab of that game for Washington, and he had the big catch on the deep ball that was severely underthrown that he comes back and he catches. He made play after play in that game. He had the big catch and run at the end of the first Giants game that season, where he scored the touchdown and helped send it to overtime. The Eagles game this year, or this past year, the first one, that catch at the end of the game, should have been to set up the 2-point conversion to win instead of kicking the damn extra point to tie it. That's clutch. There's no time left on the clock. He doesn't catch that. He doesn't get open. Like, they specifically drew up a play for Jahan to go one-on-one and bless the corner in front of him, and he did. Like, Jahan is a baller, man. And so I'm not worried in the slightest about him. I'm not concerned, obviously, about Terry. And I'm really not concerned about Luke McCaffrey. He was blessing dudes at the Senior Bowl. I know he's fully capable. He comes from a bloodline and a family lineage that suggests that he's going to assimilate to the league very well. This isn't going to be big for him. He's been around NFL players his entire life. He's not going to be awestruck. The moment's not going to be too big. I'm confident that Luke McCaffrey can play and play at a high level in this league. So I'm not really concerned about the receiver position. The only way that it becomes an issue for me is if it gets tested because of depth, because we have a slew of unforeseen circumstances. I'm not putting that out in the atmosphere, but you guys know what I'm referring to. You know, every time I do that, my kids I just was exposed to this movie called Wreck-It Ralph. Right? Had never seen it. My kids have been watching it a ton here of late. And one of their favorite lines is, "You're not going turbo on us, are you?" And anytime I bring up, unforeseen circumstances, I think about Ed. And in my mind, I'm like, "You're not going Ed on us, are you?" No, I'm not going Ed on you guys, okay? I'm not going to bring it up. But you guys know what I'm talking about, right? If we stay relatively healthy, I expect this receiver group to be really good. I do. And again, I'm an advocate for Dyami Brown being here. I still can't see a way in which he's not here, unless Dyami has a terrible camp and the others around him are just extraordinary, which I don't see happening. Dyami Brown's not a bad football player. You can say what you want about him. He's only had XYZ amount of catches. He's this, he's that. That's fine. I'm not going to argue with you. He hasn't lived up to the 3rd round billing. And again, that's not his fault. I thought we overdrafted him when we selected him in the 3rd round. I tend not to blame the player for being overdrafted. I look at the people who drafted him. It's not the player's fault. His job is to maximize his value and get drafted as high as he can. That's his job. It's the team's job to say, no. This isn't good value. You don't belong, because this is the thing we don't think about with selections, right? When people say, I'm a big advocate of get your guy when you feel the need to get your guy, right? If you feel like this guy is a 1st round pick, draft him in the 1st round. This is the thing that we don't think about as fans, though. If you overdraft a player, if you don't select, this is why it's important to select a player where they're supposed to be selected. If you take a player sooner than you're supposed to take him, you're only bringing more expectations to that player that they may not be ready for, that they may not be good enough to live up to. Like, if you draft a guy that should have gone in the 5th round, in the 2nd round, and he's a 5th round type of talent, and you draft him in the 2nd round, people are looking for 2nd round production from a 5th round type player. The problem with that is the fans aren't going to blame the organization first. They'll get around to blaming them because, yeah, you selected that, but they're going to blame the player first. Not that Quan Martin didn't deserve to be a 2nd round pick last year, but poor Quan Martin, after one preseason game, having to shut down his social media because fans were jumping all over this guy for a preseason game. Like, understand that when you select a guy, you're putting him in the crosshairs if that guy is not ready to produce at the level that you selected him to produce at. So I tend to look at the team in these situations, not the player's fault, because he probably shouldn't have been drafted where you drafted. Dyami Brown probably shouldn't have been drafted in the 3rd round. That's just me being honest. So you can't be upset when you get what you get. because I don't think he was really designed to be a third-round pick in the first place. Just like Phidarian Mathis. If Phidarian Mathis was drafted in the 5th round, you would not be as upset with Phidarian Mathis. Oh, he's a 5th-round pick. He might have even been cut by now. And even if he wasn't cut and he was just dealing with injuries and they still liked him and his upside and he was still here, you wouldn't be as upset. But it's because they drafted him in the 2nd round and you're like, bro, we spent a 2nd-round pick on you. We need 2nd-round production and this ain't it. Well, he was never a 2nd-round pick to begin with. It's not his fault. It's their fault for drafting him in the 2nd round. Anyway, Luke McCaffrey went where he was supposed to go. I only had one receiver that went ahead of him, that he went ahead of, that I would have taken before him. And again, I'm not tripping about it. So really like the pick. Really think he's going to help us. Chris Cooley thinks he's going to be a really good NFL player. So do I. And I said all of that to say that I expect this group to be more than formidable this year. And for some people, I hear the moans and groans and some of the questions getting a little bit louder about this receiver group as we've gotten closer and closer to training camp. I disagree with that. I actually think this is a solid group. Yes, and Derek B, me and him were having a conversation the other day, and he lists receiver as one of the positions that he thought we could have done more at. And I don't disagree. I told you, the trio of Zacchaeus, Bird, and Crowder don't move me. Don't move me at all. I think you could have gotten a better option. There were guys like, and again, not that those guys wanted to be here necessarily, but I think if you would have made a credible offer at a Tyler Boyd or a Zay Jones who became available, like there were options out there. And again, those guys may not have fit what you wanted to do, and you might not have liked them as players. So be it. But there were other options available out there at receiver that you could have brought in here that would have made a ton of sense and would have easily been the 3rd best receiver on this team, and it would have put Luke McCaffrey even further back. And then you're not relying on him as your 3rd receiver, right? Instead of, because I think Crowder, Zacchaeus, and Bird are all behind McCaffrey. Hell, they were behind De'Ami Brown, if you ask me, all of them. I know a lot of you are like, I'll take Crowder over De'Ami Brown. Go ahead. Bless your heart. I'm cool with Crowder too, but at this point of his career, nah, I'm good. Give me De'Ami, right? I just think they could have done a little bit more, but I'm not tripping about it. So I like the receiver group. I don't love it. I like it though. I like it a lot. And I think you can win with this group. I like the tight end position. I'm anxious to see. I think they got some decisions to make at tight end, to be honest with you, because we know the first 2 guys. I think Bates is as safe as anyone because of the niche he's carved out for himself in the league. Are you keeping 4 tight ends? I think the answer is yes, and I think it comes down to Cole Turner and Amani Rodgers. And if we're talking strictly off of upside, it's Amani Rodgers, and I don't even blink. But I got to see what he looks like post-injury, how he's moving around. But I'm pretty sure if he is the same Amani Rodgers pre-injury, they're going to be impressed. And keep in mind, Amani Rodgers hurt himself this time last year, so he's a year removed. He's fully healthy, not like a guy that injured himself in October or December and he's trying to get back on the field. He injured himself last May, I believe it was. So he's a year removed. He's fully healthy. And by the time we get to training camp, he'll be 2 more months healthier. And he should be ready to compete. I know he's already out there running around, catching the football and doing all of those things and giving himself a chance to make this roster. I'll be interested to see what they do at tight end on the back end of that tight end room. So whether they keep 3 or 4 is going to be interesting, but I'm excited about some of the decisions that'll have to be made at certain positions. Running back still leaves a lot to be desired at the back end of that position, unlike tight end, where I'm actually excited to see what they do at the back end of tight end. Because even the guy that doesn't make the team, I still think is going to ultimately be here in some capacity, right? Like nobody's going to fight us over Armani Rogers or Cole Turner. If we cut them, both of those guys, can end up on the practice squad. I don't think anybody's going to snatch those guys up, but a strong preseason can change a lot of things, right? Running back, on the other hand, I'm like, anytime I'm considering an undrafted guy at that position, and even the undrafted guys, they're cool, but are they really like difference makers? Probably not. I probably need to cut Chris Rodriguez Jr. a break. I'm probably a little harder on him than I need to be. I just wanted speed, and he's not it. And I think I take that out on him, and that's not fair to him. But, we'll see what they do at the back end of that running back room. We know who the first two guys are. Who are the next? And right now, I have to assume that Chris Rodriguez is firmly planted in position number 3 at running back. Are you keeping 3 or 4 is the question there. If it's 4, then Rodriguez is definitely on the team. If it's 3, then you got to assume that he'll have some competition coming in because they did not draft Chris Rodriguez Jr., right? He's a 5th-round pick or 6th-round pick, one of the two. I think I want to say he's a 6th-round pick. So if that's the case, he could easily be replaced, and even by an undrafted guy. So we'll see what they decide to do there. But I'm just excited about the options that we'll have. And some of these will be some interesting, camp battles as we, kind of try to figure out what they're going to do with certain positions. Receiver, not really too concerned. Not as concerned as probably some of you are. Anyway, I digress. So to recap, and then we'll get out of here. Brandon McManus, for those of you who joined late, Brandon McManus has been accused of sexually assaulting 2 flight attendants last season when he was a member of the Jacksonville Jaguars on their flight to London. They played 2 games back-to-back over in London last season. They won both of them. On that flight over to London, he was reportedly, according to the documents that were filed by these 2 women, he was hammered. And he was throwing money at them, and he was touching them. He was rubbing himself up on them, brushing himself up on them, really making them feel uncomfortable and doing things that were inappropriate for that space. And they're suing the Jaguars because they did nothing to deter this behavior. They allowed this to take place. And they also would like to pursue legal action against Brandon McManus, who is also involved in that civil suit. So we'll see if this spurs action from the Commanders in terms of looking for a replacement for him, or are they going to allow due process to play itself out, see where this goes, and in the meantime, kind of keep McManus, sort of around, but also actively be looking for his replacement. I don't think he's outright cut. Like tomorrow, they bring in some guys, they work them out, they sign one, and McManus is the guy that they cut loose in order to sign said kicker. I think they'll be upset because they're going to have to cut a player that they were planning on taking to camp potentially to bring in an extra kicker, because they don't want to cut McManus yet, because that kicker may not be a guy that you feel comfortable with going into the season. You're going to have to get an extensive look at this guy in training camp, into the preseason, before you feel comfortable moving away from a 10, 11-year veteran in this league that is capable of kicking in some high-stakes games and in some pressure-packed situations. So we'll see and all of the good kickers are gone by now. Right, that's what free agency is for. You're at the point now where you got journeyman kickers who aren't worth a damn, still available now. You really don't want to have to go down that path again. I'd start scavenging the UFL for guys that are actively kicking right now and, showing what they can do there and bringing them in. I'd rather go that route like Dallas did. I think the kicker they had last year, the one that wouldn't miss shit, he missed his first extra point, I think, last year against the Giants. And then after that, I think he made 900 kicks in a row. I'd rather go get one of those dudes for the UFL like Dallas did and bring him in and give him a shot than get one of these retread kickers. But we'll see. McManus might end up playing here this year. These things usually take a long time to sort out. Remember, Jamin Davis got popped for speeding last year sometime. They pushed that all the way to this year, and he was able to play the entire season, didn't have to worry about anything. A lot of times these things get, pushed down, but that was speeding, right? That was, maybe under the influence. This is a little bit different. A lot less tolerance for this type of behavior. We'll see if Washington, does anything here to suggest that they may be moving on from him. I told you, I wouldn't be shocked if they work out some kickers tomorrow. That's just me, but we'll see how it goes. And then, the other portion of tonight's show was really based about Luke McCaffrey, Chris Cooley talking about what kind of receiver he thinks Luke McCaffrey is going to be. He thinks he's going to be a really good player. He's tough. He can play inside. He can play outside. He's a solid route runner. He's got really good hands. He's tough to go over the middle of the field, extend for the football. He can get vertical. That is suggested by his 4.46 40, and you watch tape, and he's definitely a guy that can get up the seam and hurt you. And I just continue to harken back to the fact that he's got football bloodlines, and he's only played the position for 2 years, and he's already probably more polished than 75% of the rookies that came out this year in the draft. He's probably more polished than those guys who have been playing the position for most of their lives. He just started 2 years ago, and he's probably ahead of some of those guys already. So sky's the limit for Luke McCaffrey. I think he's going to come in here, play really good football for us, and we're going to be in good hands at the receiver position between him, Jahan, and Terry in particular. So let's get to we got one super chat and then we'll get out of here. Jay Black, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Jay writes, certified kicker, no certified perv. Hey, I said, I don't know if he might be not like us, right? So he might not be here very much longer. He might be not like us, right? As you took a page out of Kendrick's book. Yeah, so we'll see. He might be a certified perv. And when what's crazy is I was looking for some artwork for the show, and every picture of him, I looked at his face and I was like, man, you look like you might do some shit you ain't got no business doing, right? You know how some dudes just have that look? That's not fair either, by the way. Just making that abundantly clear. And again, innocent until proven guilty. But I was looking at Brandon McManus, I was like, you do look like you would do some real pervy shit, right? Like you would do some creepy shit. And then when you called out about it, you do that little creepish laugh and smirk. Like, I'm Brandon McManus, bitch. What you gonna do about it, right? He does strike me like his look. I can't say he strike me. I never met the guy. I don't know him. Just the look on his face in all the pictures that I was looking at. I was like, I hope you didn't do this shit, man. For your sake. I hate for your career to be over like this because it could be. I mean, he was already getting towards the end, but with kickers, they got an extended shelf life. He's got a pretty big leg. I'd like to think that he could kick for another 5, 6, 7 years if he wanted to, if he was, being consistent. But this will shorten it real quick if there's any validity to this. That's for sure. Anyway, I digress. You guys, go ahead, get out of here. I'll see you guys probably tomorrow. We'll have a LouieTeeNetwork podcast for tomorrow for sure. If nothing else, you'll see me on Wednesday, and we'll be talking about a number of topics. Then I have I had a couple of things that I wanted to chop it up with you guys about. I think I'll just sit on it. It's not time sensitive, so There could be another situation where I'm going to be out of the office and I could just recycle these ideas that I had. So I was going to bring it up on one of these shows. I might just put it in my back pocket. I could probably use it down the road again. But in any event, if you haven't already done so, like the video. Make sure that if you're interested to go on the trip, LTN Lifestyles, it presents Dominican Republic trip. The link is in the description of this video. We're getting close to the end of the early bird special. So if you have a chance to register before the end of this month, I'd advise you to do it if you plan on going. Save yourself a little bit of money. If not, and you still plan on going, no worries, right? You can still go. But if you want to get in on that early bird, time is running out. I should have a little bit more, detail and some more things about that trip this week. I should be putting out a call to action at some point this week. If not, it'll be here in the near future. But I'll be talking about it more and more. Obviously trying to get people to sign up. But again, I look forward to chopping it up with whomever comes. And shout out to Twin D and Sonny Rawson for signing up thus far and having registered. So hopefully more of you will do the same. And I look forward to chopping it up with whomever is in attendance. We'll have a ball. We'll have a blast. But until then, let's keep talking Commanders ball, right? And let's hope that it stays on the straight and narrow, right? Like, let's not have any more of these situations. I don't think we will. They've assembled a really good group of dudes. I'm actually shocked that Brandon McManus got drugged into this because, again, they probably were blindsided by this. They had no idea. They would not have signed him if they thought that, 3 months after signing him, that something like this could emerge. They would have never signed him. They probably are kicking themselves like, how did we not know this? How did we not, have information that this is something that could be coming down the pipeline? Anyway, I'm pretty sure behind closed doors, they're probably pissed off right now. Like, God damn it. We've done everything right this offseason to distance ourselves from conversations like this. And here we go again. But, we'll see what happens. Anyway, you guys get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys next time. Until then, you guys take care. God bless. Good night.